the type of outlet on the end, and it tells you exactly how far you can go. What happens if you need to go further than that, Rob?
You get a booster fan.
You get a booster fan.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about the booster fan?
I didn't read about them. I was just looking over your shoulder when you were on your computer today.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Podcast, our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. I'm joined by Matt Milham, Deputy Editor.
Hello.
Good to have you back.
It's good to be back.
Rob Watsack, Digital Brand Manager.
Hey.
Good to have you here, too.
Thanks.
And producer Jeff Rose. Thanks, Jeff. Please email your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. You can find previous podcasts and check out the show notes at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. Thanks for joining me here, guys. So we heard from a couple listeners. We'll get my favorite correspondence up first. This is from this graphic designer. And he said, I made this while I'm waiting for my answer on my mini split question. And for those of you who are listening, it's our logo with the Fine Roof Venting Podcast put up there.
Yeah, instead of FHB, it's
FHV.
FRV.
Yeah. he manipulated it quite a bit. He turned the big nail and the antenna into a roof with an arrow.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that's supposed to be venting.
That's where the air's going, out the vent.
Yeah. Pretty clever.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Seriously, why do we not have all of these T-shirts available
I don't know.
yet?
It seems like we should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that hard.
I'll get right on that.
Yeah, get the Etsy store going.
Mm-hmm. I would buy one. Wouldn't you?
Definitely.
Yeah. Hey, podcasters. Mike Gerton posted on Instagram a while back that he would not start a building or remodeling company in today's market. Instead, he would start a home maintenance and small repair company. He listed off a dozen items around the house that need regular maintenance but are often ignored by homeowners. Based on this advice, I tried it. I marketed myself around my local community in the suburbs of D.C. This is also one of the richest counties in the country. The results? I had a hard time getting anyone to pay more than $50 an hour. Most jobs were quick, like drywall patches and ceiling fan replacement. But by the time I'm done setting up and tearing down, the money is not worth the effort. Mike is right, though. There is a market for this work. Just not sure who is going to do it.
Yeah.
You are.
So, this is something that anytime we talk about things like how there's a labor shortage or how people do different businesses, different parts of the country, I just really wonder sometimes, is it just really hard to figure out the right formula of marketing or networking with the right people? Because is this really a business model that's tough to do, like being that handyman guy that he's talking about?
I think it's someone who, to make it work, is going to be a big company, and they're going to pay crappy wages, and they're going to do the marketing and the business running, and like the tradesperson is the, small wheel in the cog, small cog in the machine. Yeah. I'm mixing my metaphors.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, you got a point there. I remember at a JLC Live seminar one time, a guy talking about how he had like a dozen trucks and he was always parking his vans where people could see them, and he was training his guys to like look for things on people's houses that needed to be fixed as they were driving around to other jobs.
And then you just go bang on the door?
Well,
presumably?
I imagine so.
Would you like your flashing fixed, ma'am?
But the point is that it has to be an efficient machine in order to.
This is one of the times, or one of the instances that I thought like the gig economy where a tech company could match people to projects, but that has not worked, right?
Yeah, TaskRabbit is like a big one for that, and I have no idea how successful that model is for people who are trying to find work through it.
I don't know. I don't know anyone who's done that. If any of you listening have tried those services, either as the fix-it person or as a client, I would be interested to hear your experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think TaskRabbit, you're more likely to get a job like putting IKEA furniture together or something like that, right?
And we all know how fun that is.
Yeah.
But again, like how much are people willing to pay for that
Not much
service? I don't think it's a lot.
No.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've talked about it before, but, people are willing to pay top dollar for a plumber because it's an emergency. Right. But all this other stuff we're talking about, like ceiling fans and stuff like that, IKEA furniture, it's not an emergency. Like, you're not willing to pay the money to put it together, even if you don't have the time to do it yourself.
And this guy who has to navigate Beltway traffic to do these little projects, like, there's no way he can charge enough to do that.
Yeah.
It would have to be hundreds of dollars a day.
Yeah.
And everyone thinks that stuff's easy.
Yeah. If it's so easy, do it yourself.
Oh, man.
Don't call somebody else.
Well, I think people have family members and friends and stuff that they enlist to help them with these kind of projects, and they can usually get it done for what's the going rate, Rod? A case of beer?
But the funny thing is that you say that, and I can't tell you how many times in the past several months I've had someone ask me who can do, hang a door for them, or who can fix a piece of trim in their kitchen.
Are you ever tempted?
Not anymore. I used to do that stuff all the time, but it doesn't fit into my priorities and my schedule right now.
Right. What do you think? Like, would you ever entertain that as a business?
As a business? I don't know. I mean, it sounds like it would be fun.
Really?
To the extent that you're doing something different all the time.
Okay.
And I don't think I would really want to deal necessarily with like the client aspect of it, but like getting to see everybody, all these weird houses and do all kinds of weird projects. That sounds fun.
One of the more difficult things for anyone who's servicing people in their homes that are existing, right, is getting along with them, having them, have trust in you and not making a mess. So a normal remodeler has that on this scale. I think this model would be 10 times worse because you're talking about so many more clients.
Yeah. But you get to pet so many dogs. That's what I would look forward to.
My experience with pets, like when I'm doing my handyman stuff, is actually not at all easy.
Yeah.
You have to keep them in the house. It's complicating.
Yep.
You have to be nice to them, bring them treats.
That's easy.
It isn't easy. And most of the dogs I've hung out with cool on job sites.
Yeah.
So how's your shop coming?
That good?
Yeah. I bought some more drywall, but I haven't installed it yet. So
okay.
No, I was like, I've worked so hard on this house for 17 years now, and it'll never be the house that I want it to be. So I was actually looking for land over the weekend.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a drastic step.
Don't tell my wife.
Oh, shit. Does she listen to the show?
No, actually, it was my daughter who was encouraging me. She was like, "When are you going to sell this old house and build us a nice modern house?"
Whoa.
About the time you go off to college.
Pretty much.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
So in New Milford, you were looking for real estate?
Yeah, I actually found a lot for $17,000.
What's wrong with it?
It's half an acre, and it's mostly one giant rock.
What could go wrong?
It was kind of a nice. There was a house there for 150 years, and they tore it down a couple of years ago. And the person who owns it now, I looked it up, bought it for $4,000 the lot. So they say it's buildable, even though the zoning is like 40-foot setback, and the property is only 50 feet deep. So I don't know.
And all that ledge, I can't imagine what the septic system would cost for design. No, that's a complicated thing.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe at least just a place to build myself a little garage to hide my toys.
I'd get a storage locker.
Yeah.
And you just got back from Arkansas.
I did. Yeah.
And that's why you weren't here for a couple weeks.
Yeah, that was why I wasn't here for one of the 2 weeks that I was gone.
Okay.
Yeah.
How'd that go?
It went pretty good. Except there was a tornado the day that I landed. That was fun.
Did you see it?
Really?
I didn't see it. It was
uncanny.
It was like midnight-ish. I got woken up by the alarm for this
So you
tornado.
heard the horn, the air raid
No,
horn?
I didn't even hear that. It was on my cell phone. It started screeching. I was like, what the heck's going on? Looked at it. I was like, yeah, there's definitely some wind out there. And woke up in the morning, and there were, fortunately, not much damage around where I was in Fayetteville, but just north of that in Bentonville, which is sort of like the headquarters of Walmart.
Right.
Trees snapped all over the place, and there was all kinds of mostly like not real terrible damage to most houses, but when I was driving back, I was looking at this one house that had a standing seam roof, still had a standing seam roof on half of the side of the roof that was facing the road. And like, I looked at it for a second. I was like, is that just going on, or did that get ripped off? And I'm looking at the spacing of like these sleepers or furring strips that they had put down on the deck. And attached the roofing panels too, and they were spaced probably at least 4, maybe 6 feet on center.
That's part of the problem with the...
I was like, what the heck is going on there? But then it just made me think about attaching these roofing panels to like continuous sleepers like that in any instance, because the underlayment is on the roof deck.
Right.
And then they put these horizontal sleepers down and attach the roofing to that. If any water gets behind that, it's just going to get trapped behind those furring strips.
Yeah, there's all kinds of different things people do with that. Sometimes I've seen people do angled sleepers that don't run the whole length of the roof.
Cut notches
or they
in
run
them.
2 layers with like 1 layer vertical and another layer horizontal.
Yeah, but you said people cut kerfs in them. That seems like a fun job, cutting thousands of kerfs.
And a 2x4.
But then also I think people use like that Corvette stuff, right? That stuff I think works fine for sleepers
Yeah, but you can't use that under metal roofing, I'm sure, because I think it would have some degree of compression, and if that panel starts moving up and down, it's going to sail away.
Yeah, you might have to use
Just like
longer
the song.
screws. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why on all the metal roof projects that I do, I always just run the purlins almost like they're rafters in the other direction. But actually, that doesn't matter if you got the sheathing, I guess.
Yeah, I think metal roofing should be directly on the sheathing.
Yeah, and it seems like, at least from the, like the pre-made panels that I've seen, that's what they tend to recommend, I think, is just going right to the sheathing. So
I know folks put those, I think they're called purlins.
Whatever
purlins.
And it makes it easy to get around the roof, and you can correct for like saddleback roofs that have the typical sag in the center of the ridge, right? You can shim that part up and work toward the ends.
Yeah.
The eaves, or the rakes rather.
Yeah, I mean the purlins are common in a barn where you're just trying to minimize the amount of materials, and all you're trying to do is keep the place dry. But on a house, I think I'd go with the sheathing.
Plus, the strength afforded by the sheathing panels is got to be much higher than if you just had purlins up there. But this house had both, right?
Yeah, it had sheathing and then the purlins on top of it. So
I don't quite get the
why they
logic
bothered.
of that.
I don't know. Maybe they thought they would get some kind of an air gap. I really don't know.
I was going to talk about my wife's design process for our new quilt in our bedroom, because like we have this nice furniture now and then this like horrible, boring gray comforter, but I forgot to put the pictures up, so I'll save that for another time. But
Does Threads have a podcast?
they do.
You can talk about it on theirs.
This is more a conversation about the like design process and using your like home office printer to photocopy and reproduce patterns or take out parts of things that you don't like. So she was explaining it to me last night, and it seemed very useful to folks out there who are designing their own projects. So
Yeah.
So
remind me.
before you move on to any questions, I just wanted to mention. I think the week that this is airing is the week before we're having that mini split webinar, that HVAC webinar.
Okay.
It's our second year in a row. It was super popular last year. I think we had 1,500 people sign up for it. And we have a couple of experts from Mitsubishi, and this particular one is about designing for cold climates with high performance electric HVAC. And I don't have the whole outline in front of me, but it's a pretty detailed seminar on that process, and they did a great job last year. So it's a free just online.
This episode should air on November 8th.
Yeah, it'll be the 14th is when the webinar is. Yeah.
Pay attention for that, and how can folks sign up for that?
I'll put a link in here, but if you just go to our website and just search for Mitsubishi webinar, you should be able to find it. But I'll definitely put a link in the show notes.
And how long do we expect that to be?
I think it was about an hour presentation. Okay. Yeah.
Make time for that for sure. Dear Fine Homebuilding Podcast, my family has a cabin in northern Wisconsin that was maintained by my grandparents before they passed away. My wife and I are generally the only two who use it on a regular basis, now aside from the holidays, which means we're tasked with making repairs and maintaining the aging cabin and barn. While I feel comfortable on the subjects of air sealing and insulation after 200 episodes, are there any books or resources you can recommend on general maintenance and repairs for a seasonal property? I'll try to poke around in the walls the next time I'm up there because I'm sure there will be some hidden treasures worth sharing. I think he's talking about dead animals. Probably not. Do you have any suggestions for Nicolas?
No.
I was going to say renovation, right?
Yeah.
The Taunton Press book is good. It's not specific to vacation properties, but it seems like it's got a lot of basic stuff that would be helpful for someone who's trying to maintain their own house.
Yeah.
And I would suggest the bulletin boards, the forums at both GBA and Fine Homebuilding, and for specific questions. Those folks are super helpful, and it seems like they usually respond within minutes or hours to most questions. So that's a fantastic resource, and there's a lot of very smart people who participate in those.
Yeah, honestly, we've mentioned it several times before. The GBA forum is just the most robust place to get answers to those kinds of questions. I mean, of course, we've got the Fine Homebuilding forum too. Not quite as active, but maybe if more people hear this and head on over there, they
ask
can
questions.
Yeah, it has picked up.
Has
compared, I think compared to what it was, yeah, for sure. Ever since it kind of came back under the regular website.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Before the years before the dawn of social media, it was the only kind of place to go to get those kinds of questions answered. We've got a pretty vibrant community on Instagram too. So if you follow us on Instagram, you'll see a lot of great things going on, and we try to showcase tips that other people are sharing too.
Nicolas, I would also tell you to get a subscription to Fine Homebuilding magazine because what other place could have so much good information?
Yeah. One book that I do have that is not a Taunton book that is kind of like a good resource for all kinds of random stuff is this Black & Decker Complete Home Improvement.
You find that to be good?
Yeah. At least for electrical stuff, which is the main thing that I've used it for in the past. But it has information on all kinds of things. And I bought it used on Amazon for like $2.81, I think.
That's amazing.
Back when I was in school.
Yeah.
And it has an amazing amount of information for $2.81.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah. But
I found one book very helpful when I was early in my career was the illustrated book of Home Building and Remodeling by Charlie Wing, and it's had several different versions and several different publishers, but it's largely always been the same. So I think if you got one of those from any one of those.
I just looked it up. It's actually the visual handbook of building and remodeling.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Very good book. Lots of very meat and potatoes stuff without a lot of filler, got to say.
yeah.
And this next question, hey, Patrick, Matt, and Rob. I recently listened to an old Fine Woodworking podcast where Justin was a guest discussing home workshops. He mentioned that for a garage workshop, you should install rigid foam first, then batt insulation. Well, I wish I had heard that podcast 2 years ago. That's when I installed in my garage some extra batt insulation left over from an attic project and covered the faced insulation with 6 mil polyethylene. Now I'm thinking of putting up drywall for added protection and a better looking shop. My question is this: should I remove the 6 mil poly before installing the drywall? Would leaving the poly between the faced insulation and the drywall create moisture problems? So let's tackle that one. He's got another part of the question, but let's do this first.
It depends on what its walls are. I would say whether or not you leave it there. But I mean, it really depends on a lot of things, but that would probably be the first thing. I mean, if you had block walls, I would say, then I would probably take it off, but I don't know.
Can we see the outside of that building?
It looks like aluminum siding maybe,
Yeah.
and I think stick built.
The current suggestion is poly is not a good idea in all but the very coldest climates, but the Canadians, they live in cold places, but they make it work as an air barrier, and you can do that too, but it's typically not detailed that way in this country. So that's a challenge that you'd want to research how to detail it as an air barrier and make it perform that way. But if you're putting up drywall, that's a better air barrier, so why not make that the air barrier? And I would say the poly makes the assembly less forgiving because it can only dry one way, so I would take it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because the thing that happens is any condensation that happens on that poly, if there's a difference in temperature from the inside to the inside of the wall cavity, is going to just drip down onto those sills.
Yeah, and if there's any leaks on the outside, siding always leaks a little bit, right? And so it can't dry to the inside. Mm-hmm. So it has to dry through the aluminum siding through the outside.
Yeah, I would say if he's noticed condensation on the inside of the poly at any point, then, that would be an indication that he already has some moisture in those walls. And I would definitely want to take it down just to try to help it dry out.
Yes, agreed. I think it's going to have moisture on it just because it's not a perfect air barrier, and any air that gets behind it is going to show up as water vapor on the poly later, I suspect.
Yeah, well, I mean, with something like this, if that is aluminum siding, it's got a pretty big air gap kind of behind it. I mean, that almost counts as a ventilated cladding to begin with. So it might be able to dry pretty well to the outside. And
he's got overhangs, and it's a hip roof, so there's overhangs on all sides, which is a good thing to have.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to take him, 20 minutes to rip all that poly out?
Right. And you'll figure out something else to do with it.
Yeah.
It's going to make a perfect lumber cover. My 2.5 car garage is 20 by 22, with half of it devoted to my workshop. I created a curtain out of 6 mil poly that runs on a hospital curtain type track attached to a 2x6 running down the center of the garage. The winters here in northern Illinois, Evanston, can be pretty cold at times, I bet. But last winter, the inside temp was in the upper 40s and low 50s most days using a small propane heater. Mr. Buddy, I'm hoping that drywall might improve the heat retention. Of course it will. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you need to do the ceiling, too.
Yeah.
It's also much safer to have a drywall fire barrier up than poly sheeting.
Yeah, especially if you're running a propane heater in there that space.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think I'd want to have
and
my
a
entire
lot of plastic hanging all over the place.
Yeah. I'd get the plastic out of there. And he wants to keep his space more conditioned, right? And the rest of it is, I presume, has a car in it. So what would you tell him to do here? Put the car outside is what I would say.
Well, but I think it might even be more a matter of him just trying to make it a smaller space that he's trying to condition there, and that is a big challenge of a workshop, especially with a garage door. I mean, I'm kind of running into the same problem with my own shop. I mean, I have swinging like carriage style doors,
which are easier to seal than an overhead door for sure.
Yeah, I mean, a rolling door is about the worst scenario. So maybe some sort of wool blanket or some kind of a curtain of some sorts, or even like a thermal curtain might be nice. Something that's hopefully less flammable than
the plastic
sheeting.
Yeah.
Once you get your drywall air barrier up on your walls and your ceiling, it's going to make all the difference in the world. And the door is going to still be a problem, but you're going to be able to heat the space when you need to. It's going to be hard to keep it warm affordably.
Yeah.
But when you're out there for a few hours, it's not going to be a big deal. You can use your propane space heater, and you actually want some ventilation because those things put out CO.
Yeah. But one thing he gets into in the next part of his question is sort of he doesn't really have much to attach drywall to on the ceiling.
So what should we tell him about that? Should we read that part of the question here?
I don't know. Well, first of all, let me just say he gets into here. It sounds like he just has like a handful of ceiling joists.
Yes.
That, onto which he could hang anything. He refers to them as rafters, but he's really talking about ceiling joists. He's got basically three running one direction and one sort of like carrying sort of most of the center load, it sounds like.
Yeah, so he's got to put those on 16 or 24-inch centers so he can hang sheetrock. Mm-hmm. And that's not hard, right?
Yeah. Do you think he needs to add more? Or do you think he can just get away with putting blocking between the existing ceiling joists?
No, I do not think that.
He needs some proper roof framing there, or ceiling framing rather.
Yeah, and then blow the whole thing full of cellulose and enjoy your nice new workshop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have a similar situation in mind.
What's your plan?
I have no idea. The span is like 24 feet, and it's right now it's like clear span 24 foot long 2x6s. And I'm like, where do I find more of those?
Try to buy those today. Wow.
I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to put I have to find a way to get like some sort of center beam in there, I guess, for those. But
you have a garage door header, so you'll put it into on that.
Yeah, I can't remember if the header is lower. I don't remember where it is. The arrangement of everything.
You could go. So does your roof gable on the garage door side?
Mm-hmm. No, you mean the gable end?
Yeah.
No,
the eave end is over the garage door.
Yep. Yeah, so it's all the rafters are bearing
going the wrong way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you just need some more wood up there.
Mm-hmm.
Are you planning to convert this into a more livable shop?
No, not really. It would be nice to be able to get some heat in there because right now, there's no ceiling finish at all, and it's a vented roof.
Right. It's
so
outside.
the soffits are open, and any warmth that accumulates in there just immediately goes out the roof.
Right. What do you put the cars in there?
No.
So it's just for storage?
Right now, it's pretty much just shop space. It's had a car in it one time when I redid my wife's brakes. That was it.
So that was to work on it, not to
store it. Yeah.
Store it.
I just didn't want to do that in the rain.
Do you have a table saw set up in there?
Not a good one.
But you have a portable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you made your outfeed table / assembly table?
Yeah, / Rubo style
workbench.
Yeah.
And that's up all the time?
Yeah, although it's sort of rolled out of the way right now.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time I use the battery-operated table saw and just take that outside because it's easier than rolling that other lunking thing around.
What do you think of that? You've had that for a while now.
I like it.
Which one is it?
The Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Milwaukee Fuel battery-operated table saw. I love it. I mean,
does it have enough power?
It does. It's got a really thin blade. It's thin kerf, and it does vibrate a little bit, especially when you're going through knots or
I think
any kind
all
of weird
those
stuff.
Little saws do anyway.
It's just not heavy enough to be able to handle. So you don't get necessarily the cleanest cut, but for like rough carpentry, it's great.
Yeah, and most people you're using that for extension jams, and one side goes to the window, and it doesn't even does it really matter?
Yeah, it doesn't have any problem ripping through Advantech or Zip or anything like that. It handles. I mean, I've put 2x Doug fir through it and handled that fine too.
And it's a reasonable runtime. You have that huge battery pack.
Yeah,
what is
I've
it,
got
12?
the 12 amp hour, and I've got a 9 amp hour, and between those, I can keep it going all day.
That's
as
cool.
long as I just plug one in when it dies.
Yeah. Have you seen these things?
I have not seen one in person. I've not used one myself. No.
I was very skeptical, but they do cut.
Well, I mean, like we said, all of the cordless stuff just keeps getting more and more powerful. I mean, I've used that Milwaukee chainsaw, and it was cutting faster than my neighbor's steel. So,
I bet that guy felt a little inadequate.
Yeah, and he's the kind of guy who he would definitely notice that too. So,
one of the product engineers told me one time, he's like, there's a limit to how many electrons you can get out of a 15 amp circuit, right? So we have to size motors with that limitation in mind. Theoretically, there's no limitation for battery technology, right? So I think in the near future, and if it hasn't already happened, these things are going to be more powerful than their corded brethren. And the people I've talked to have used the whole hog, the right angle drill that plumbers and electricians use for drilling holes for pipes and wires. The corded version is more powerful than the electric one.
Yeah.
So.
You mean the cordless?
The cordless
version.
Is more powerful than the corded version.
Yeah, and I've been using that too for all kinds of stuff.
That's
mostly
fantastic,
mixing drywall
right?
compound. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And that's the kind of tool that not having a cord is a huge advantage. Because if you're roughing in pipes and wires, you're all over the place with that.
Mm-hmm.
So when are we going to start switching to cordless houses?
How would that work?
No, I mean, just with all these fires out in California lately, there's been these blackouts where they shut the power down.
Millions of people. It is crazy.
They're shutting the power down. All, supermarkets have to throw out all their food. And
I was looking at the map in the New York Times yesterday of the number of people in the areas affected. It is staggering how many people we're talking about.
Yeah. So there's this guy, I forget what his name is. I think it's Jeru Garcia or something like that. He works with EV West, which is one of those electric car conversion companies on the West Coast, and they also sell lots of components and kits for converting cars, but they're getting really into Powerwall stuff too, like selling the cells that people can use to make battery backup systems for their houses, because you can buy the Tesla ones, and some other companies make them. But these guys are saying that right now, if you're a DIY kind of person, these guys, they're showing people how to build these things for half of what you can buy one for new. And so a lot of these, I think these blackouts are going to actually accelerate the development of that stuff, because people in California who are already focused on solar and battery powered stuff are going to start improving the availability of this type of stuff in houses. So you're going to see solar powered houses, or at least solar backup houses.
I hope you're right. I mean, there's already a huge tech industry there to foster this, so it would seem a logical fit.
Yeah.
Yeah, the power cells these guys were selling.
But what happens when that stuff catches on fire?
That was my next question.
Well, that's the thing. I was thinking of that too when I was watching this. I was like, well, I guess you probably have to have like you know how you got the tornado shelters out in like tornado country. Well, they're going to have the same kind of room, except it's going to prevent you from the explosion from the batteries.
The lithium batteries.
Yeah, you don't go in the cell in the hole. The batteries do.
Right.
I've seen videos of power tool batteries that catch fire. It is very dramatic. I can only imagine a power wall sized one catching fire.
I mean, we're talking about like 10 kilowatts of battery packs. But the thing is, so the current lithium-ion batteries are basically mostly solvent, very highly flammable solvent. That's the electrolyte in them or whatever. But, they keep changing the technology, and they're supposedly on the horizon, the solid-state batteries, which are made out of some sort of ceramic, porous ceramic. And if they do ever get something like that, then it will completely change the game, because all of a sudden you'll have these completely inert as opposed to volatile, flammable batteries.
I was thinking, like, why is the battery a separate thing? Like, why is the battery not the wall? Like, you spend all this money to make this case and this circuitry. Like, why not have it just be part of the house? That's my $1 million idea.
What do you mean by that?
So, like, you build the house from the batteries, for example. They're arranged like Lego bricks. And why does the house have to be this other separate entity when the, like, battery boxes could be the structure?
Right now, the limitation may be code, but I don't know.
Do you think that's dangerous?
Yeah. Let's build our walls out of tubes of flammable liquid. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just stack up a bunch of old lead batteries. They're heavy.
Yeah.
Earthquake resistant. Not really.
I don't know what, like, those folks in I sympathize. I mean, I've been out of power for a few days at a time, 3 times now since living in Connecticut, and it's a huge burden. And these folks, it's looking like it's going to be weeks. Isn't that right?
Yeah, and the thing is, it doesn't seem like, we kind of think that these fires happen in very specific little pockets in the wilder parts, but I mean, it's in West LA right now.
Oh, the map shows that it looks like a third of California.
Yeah.
This is my favorite salutation ever. Builders of fine homes. That makes me want to, like, get my town crier voice up. Builders of fine homes.
I don't know that we're the builders of fine homes. We're the people who talk about the builders of fine homes.
We're just the conduit. They're talking to our audience.
That's true. My 3,000 square foot, 4-bedroom New Jersey house was built in the early 80s, and although it's an otherwise reasonably well designed, there is only a single zone for heat and air conditioning. I've adjusted the dampers, but there's still an uncomfortable difference between the first and second floors. In the winter, we heat mostly via a wood stove in the living room, and the bedrooms can be 10 to 15 degrees lower than the first floor. I believe I need 3 zones, one for the first floor, one for the 2 bedrooms on the side of the house with an optimistic pool. What is an optimistic pool? Is that just a pool you don't use much?
I don't know.
No idea.
Okay, so if anyone out there listening knows what that is, I'd be curious. And another for the bedrooms on the side of the house where moss grows. I don't think automatic dampers or inflatable bags that close off certain runs are a good solution and sound like an inadequate workaround from what I've read. I believe the options are going all in and adding smaller air handlers for true 3 zones or adding a mini split for the bedrooms. The mini splits offer another decision tree of forced air only on the first floor and mini splits upstairs, or just a mini split supplement to my current system. My current equipment is not terribly efficient, but they are overbuilt tanks that I don't see a need to replace in the next 5 years. Tom, this is a very complicated question for several reasons, but I'm going to let Matt answer all of it.
Well, one question I have to ask, and I mean, so in the early days of central heating, when you'd have like a steam boiler, I can understand like the whole building a house with a single zone or if it's a single-story house.
But a steam system you could control the valve on the radiator, right?
But a two-story house with lots of bedrooms on different sides, I don't know how people get away with
it. It was a bad decision from the get-go.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's unfortunate that we inherit these problems sometimes when we buy houses, but I just can't believe people cheap out like that and don't put an extra thermostat, or even if they had to throw it.
Okay, so I'm going to play devil's advocate. I totally agree with you, but imagine it from a builder's perspective, okay? Say your heating system costs $10,000. Now you have to buy two, right? So now it's $20,000. That might be your entire profit on the project in the 80s was $10,000. Do you think you're going to get someone to pay, that $10,000 premium when the house down the street, which only has one zone and one system, is $10,000 cheaper?
Well, when we're talking zones, we're not usually talking entire additional systems, though, right? I mean, if you're having a different
If you're talking about forced air, you are. I mean, you can put zone dampers, which he alludes to, but they have some trade-offs.
Yeah.
Do you want to touch on the trade-offs of the zone dampers?
I only know a tiny, tiny little bit about this, and I have zero experience with furnaces myself. I've never lived in a house that had one. I've never had to install
Maybe
one.
you're not the right person.
I'm really not probably the right guy to talk about it at all. But
So the problem with the zone dampers on one system, right, is when only one zone is calling for heating or cooling, you have all this airflow because the furnace is meant to supply 3 zones, but it's still making the same amount of air if you're only sending it to one. So you end up with too much airflow, lots of static pressure, which makes the electricity consumption go up on the blower motor, and it means that your furnace is not working like it's supposed to. Not enough air is moving over the exchanger, and that can lead to problems. Icing in the cooling season, or you can even crack your heat exchanger in the heating season, I'm told.
And that's partly because there's some sort of a return, I imagine, that's like it's basically sucking up the excess return air and returning this cold air in the summer to the cooling unit and going over the exchanger and cooling it off.
There's just not enough air moving over it, so it doesn't lose its it doesn't take up any heat, so it freezes.
Is that a problem if you've got like a variable speed motor? Is this just a thing for like the single speed motor units?
I think that would help a lot to have
an ECM blower.
An ECM blower.
Yeah.
And the other thing you can do is people put in these like transfer ducts, right? And all it's meant to do is to like lower the pressures, but they have some problems too. And you can do a single unit air handler with multi-zones, but it's difficult and it takes somebody with some real smarts, and you have to design the ductwork so it's big enough that when only one zone is calling, it still allows enough airflow over the coil or the heat exchanger. And that takes some smarts.
I mean, this kind of sheds a little bit of light on the fact that at the summit, we were talking about this. A lot of the speakers were saying how HVAC is often one of the things that people it isn't designed properly for the house because it's difficult.
It's difficult.
It takes a lot of thought, a lot of planning, and the fact that every single house is a different shape and a different layout. It's like you're even with the best calculations, your ductwork is still an educated guess in most cases as to what it needs to be.
Right, which is why you need commissioning, because things turn out different than you thought they were at the beginning. So you need to have some flexibility in the design and make it work as efficiently as possible, which is another step after the thing is all installed that nobody wants to do. Yeah. I almost think that his comfort complaints could be solved with some recommissioning and some perhaps modifications to the duct system or sealing it. Oftentimes the temperature stratification is the symptom of other problems, and it would be worth having someone to check out the system if you want to stick with it. Otherwise, I think it makes perfect sense to spend a bunch of money and put a second air handler up in the attic if you can, although I generally discourage people from doing that. Everyone does it anyway. So you might as well have someone do a good job with insulated ductwork, run correctly, and make sure there's a real manual J calculation done, because oftentimes that is very seat of the pants as well. And as far as what to do with your then oversized first floor heating plant, I don't know. I mean,
I wasn't really clear on why he was suggesting possibly adding a mini split. I mean, I know it's for comfort, but he's not willing to replace the system that he's got, and he's going to spend a ton of money adding this mini split just for the upstairs.
So, I mean, that would solve his comfort problem, right? Mm-hmm. And it would be on the path to replacing the downstairs unit too, right? Mm-hmm. Now you only have to buy one additional mini split a few years down the road when he decides he's ready to get rid of this. So, I mean, I think there's some logic there. I'd want to have my house comfortable and bite the bullet if it bugged me enough. Perhaps the cheapest thing to do is move the thermostat upstairs.
Yeah.
Well, especially the thing is, he's talking about how he heats in with the wood stove downstairs.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of times, just the location of the thermostat plays a big part in something like that. If he's not requiring any additional heat downstairs.
Yeah, I'd say, largely close the registers on the first floor, move the thermostat upstairs, and, at least the 2 floors would be the same temperature, relatively speaking.
Yeah. And change out your blower motor. If you have just
realistically, I mean, as we said, this is a complicated thing because we're only making guesses, not seeing his house and understanding his whole system. So really getting a knowledgeable HVAC person in there to give them advice is probably the smartest thing you can do. Yeah,
it's true. Interestingly, your point about swapping the blower motor, right? Your suggestion is to put in an ECM motor to replace the permanent split capacitor motor that came in the furnace because those are notoriously inefficient. Mm-hmm. But I read today on GBA, as researching this, that like 80% of the ECM motors adapted to existing systems use more energy than the old motor because of the static pressure. It's trying so hard to maintain the airflow it's designed to deliver, but the ducts are too small and poorly designed, so it has to work really hard. And as a result, actually ends up using more electricity than the motor was meant to replace.
Because it's not just turned on or off; it's actually trying to measure.
It's trying to compensate for bad ductwork.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Man, it's a hard thing to answer. You need a good system designer and a good installer.
Yeah,
and it's good. Those people are not easy to find.
Yeah, I'm glad we have Patrick here to geek out on this stuff because you and I pretty much failed on that one.
Yeah, well, I have no interest in it. I just dislike forced air, period.
Why? It's heat, it's air conditioning, it's
a great repository for dust and all kinds of junk that just lives in there.
So I've seen inside ducts that have been in service for decades, and you know what? They are often not gross at all. Yes, they're dusty, but I mean, and I've seen other ones that have had water in them and they're dangerous, I'm sure, but I don't think that has to be the case.
It probably doesn't, but I still don't like the idea of it.
But now, Patrick, have you lived in a house with radiators?
Not since college.
Okay. Yeah, because the thing is, my house, when I first moved in, had the big old cast iron radiators running, and, we've talked about that I no longer have a working boiler, so that they're just sitting there looking pretty, which is sad because it was such nice heat, just even... didn't dry the air out and kick all the dust around the house. And
I think that was the perfect system for homes built 100 years ago, right? That was the pinnacle of comfort and technology. But if we have a good envelope, your heating needs are low. You just need to make a little heat, and forced air is way easier to do that with. Making a little heat with a hydronic system is difficult, and you don't have air conditioning, which increasingly people expect.
Yeah. Yeah, but the key there is having a good envelope first.
Yeah, totally. So much of what we talk about is that, right? That's why people say we're the Fine
Air Sealing
Podcast. And it's about keeping what heat or cool you make in the house, and then if you do that, getting it to where it needs to go is a much smaller task. Mm-hmm. Hi, guys and gal. Oh, sorry.
That's me.
My sister just bought a house in Jackson, Mississippi. The dryer is inside the house, but it vents to her garage. Is this okay, or does she need to vent it to the outside? If it needs to go outside, does the ductwork need to be insulated to keep water from condensing inside the duct? And what is too long for a duct? So I'm going to start off here because I immediately typed in to my Google, how long can a dryer duct be? And Boom. The National Association of Certified Home Inspectors says 35 feet exactly. And that's wrong. Yeah, because it's up to the dryer manufacturer. They decide how much pressure they deliver. And no, that has to vent outside. If it's gas, it's actually putting combustion products into your house in the garage. In a minimum, it's loading up the garage with moisture, which is bad for materials and cars even. So, yeah, that has to go outside.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I wish they were all
Unless
so
there's
easy.
something in your garage that you're trying to, like, kill.
Right.
Yeah, maybe if you had like a greenhouse attached to the side of the garage, you could pump it into there.
The humidity up. Yeah.
Get the carbon dioxide and the humidity in there for the plants.
Mm-hmm.
This question brought the opportunity to remind listeners about my favorite company related to dryer venting, and that's Innovate Technologies, innovate.com, INOVATE. And they make a bunch of awesome products for venting your dryer. Long sweep elbows that have much less static increase the static pressure a lot less. They have these boxes that allow you to recess the dryer connection into the wall so you can actually get your dryer up against it. And they have the right connectors to get your dryer to the ductwork. And all these things are awesome.
You mean they don't just use like the cheap duct tape?
They actually have ways that work.
Okay.
Yeah. So you need to look up your dryer's installation instructions, and that used to be hard to do, but now with the internet, you can put in the model number, and most likely it'll come up on your manufacturer's website, and in there will be a chart of how long the ducting can be, and it's going to be based on the number of elbows in the run, whether they're 90 or 45 degrees, and the type of outlet on the end, and it tells you exactly how far you can go. What happens if you need to go further than that, Rob?
You get a booster fan.
You get a booster fan. Do you want to tell us about the booster fan?
I didn't read about them. I was just looking over your shoulder when you were on your computer today. But it looks just like the remote bath fan that I have in my
Made by
my
the same
house.
company.
Yeah.
Fantech is the one that I pulled up. And
Is it
it's
the same fan?
I don't think it's the same fan, but it's the same company. And it might be the same fan. But anyway, it senses the pressure from your existing dryer, and that triggers a switch that turns it on, and you can run crazy long lengths of dryer ducting with these things. So it's a pretty elegant solution, and this one that I pulled up is the least expensive in the line, and it's like $200, which seems like a sweet deal.
It kind of looks like a little turbocharger there.
It is. It's an axial fan, much like a turbocharger. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to say axial fan. Some engineer's actually going to write in and say, that's not an axial fan, Patrick. You're an idiot. And should it be insulated in
Well, you've dealt with this, Matt, right?
Yeah.
But his house is in
is in upstate New
Mississippi.
York. No.
Oh, Mississippi.
This guy's in.
I mean, I guess just like any drain pipe, you could potentially deal with it just by pitch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think insulating it would be a good idea, right? It's going to help airflow and prevent the condensation. If you have the condensation in there, then it traps more lint, and then the thing gets gradually clogged up. So Fantech recommends if you actually use one of their inline duct boosters they sell a kit that's an additional lint screen in front of the fan so it doesn't get full of lint and screw it up. So probably worth buying that too.
So does that mean you have to... It's an inline lint screen that you have to open periodically?
Yeah, it has a little access door and you pull it out. And I don't know if you have to do it with every load. I would hope not, because it's going to be kind of a drag to go out to your garage.
Yeah.
But Fantech will tell you you have to do that.
Yeah.
Maybe they can make something like that little... what's that little turbo thing for pulling the wood chips out of your shop vacuum? It's like the
cyclonic separator.
Cyclonic separator, yeah. That's
My God, we should be writing this stuff down.
That's your next $1 million idea.
Oh my God, I'm going to connect to my axial fan. I'm going to make $1 gazillion. So you guys know that the product manufacturers send me a lot of product announcements for new things. And this is something I wanted to share with you guys because I'm pretty sure you're going to want to get one. Hi, Patrick. Hope you're well. I wanted to reach out and share the news that Samsung released new software enhancements today for its Family Hub refrigerator. that will allow existing and new owners to get the most out of their refrigerators. With Samsung's new updates, the Family Hub delivers a new level of connected living. Family Hub can help users save even more time by allowing them to select their favorite recipe and preheat their Samsung oven right from the Family Hub screen. So, accompanying the press release was a photograph, as there often is, showing the new product. And I couldn't help but notice that the refrigerator is 6 feet away from the range. So it seemed like it would be easier to just go turn it on than to navigate the menus to do it from the refrigerator, which...
Right.
But maybe just program it ahead of time. No?
What?
I don't know.
So you call the fridge on your phone?
Yeah.
And tell it to turn on the oven?
Yeah.
Sure. As you're shopping for your groceries and your little fridge pops up with the menu at home because it's tracking you at the grocery store, and then it reminds the oven that that you're going to be busy soon. And
I mean, I'm a sucker for technology. I really am, but I think some things are just a step too far. Like, do I really need my refrigerator to turn on my oven when it's 6 feet away?
I don't know.
Even if it was in another room, would it be?
I don't know.
Do people buy this stuff? Do you hear your folks?
I don't know anybody who has one of those fancy Wi-Fi enabled fridges or stoves. No, but I am in the market for a new stove soon, so I'll
Well, Samsung's definitely not going to send us one. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
Not going to send you one. Rob loves them.
So I remember conversations about water heaters that would be web enabled with your home hub, right? And to me, that made a lot of sense because, theoretically, the utility company could turn off your water heater in the instances of highest electrical demand, right? So that would free up energy to the grid to use for other purposes when you weren't home anyway. Your water heater could make power or make hot water using the power, an hour or 20 minutes later, right? So that seems like a good use of technology, but people were up in arms because they didn't want the utility to have any say over their stuff, which I kind of get.
But for a long time, utility companies have offered off-peak rates, right? So it's basically just buying into a higher tech version of that, really. So I mean, it's a choice. I would imagine that. I guess it's a matter of whether or not it's a choice, right?
I don't. That is the question, right? Do you have to sign up? Would you find that objectionable to let the utility company take the reins on your water heater?
Well, no, I don't think I would. I mean, you can adjust as long as it's not impeding on my lifestyle, I guess.
You wouldn't want them shutting it off when you're taking a shower, for example.
If they're not shutting it off at 5:30 in the morning, then, no problem.
Yeah, I kind of agree.
So one thing about all of these Wi-Fi enabled appliances is, and I don't know how true this is, but I know there was a lot of worry that because they're doing really simple things like turning your stove on and off, and they're not handling sensitive data like your emails, the security protocols in the Wi-Fi networks in these machines are very, very basic. And so I guess there's concerns that because they can communicate with more sophisticated systems in your house, that they were basically a backdoor
to your home network.
To your home network. I'm sure they're dealing with that, but it just seems like we're moving so fast, adding these features to our appliances and not maybe completely understanding all the things that they're doing.
The two people who I've spoken to who have had automated homes, right, smart homes, have both abandoned the technology because integrating all the elements was so overwhelming and non-functional that they just said it's not worth it, forget it. So...
Well, and I was watching an episode of, you've seen this show, Mr. Robot? It's kind of about this sort of big brother society that's run by some major tech company, and there's these hackers trying to break in to sort of bring back our freedoms or something that I haven't been watching it, my wife has. And in one episode, these hackers basically turned everything on in somebody's smart home, and lights were flashing and sirens were blaring, and everything was just driving this person crazy to drive them out of the house so they could go in and covertly, do something. Do something. Yeah.
The plumbers. Oh man. Well, if any of you are interested in the Samsung Family Hub refrigerator, you can get it in a range of configurations, including a 4-door flex, 4-door French door, 3-door French door, and in addition to the Tuscan stainless steel, which I think is shown, it's also available in black stainless and stainless.
So now the whole idea of this fridge is it's got one of those touch screens on the front. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can display all kinds of calendars and
I
memos
presume
and
it's
stuff.
web enabled because it said you could listen to your music while you were, cooking dinner.
Yeah. So I do like the idea of having a touch screen like that in your kitchen where you could see menus.
What about like a tablet?
Well, yeah. But that's the thing is like I don't know that it needs to be part of my refrigerator.
I would.
Yeah.
But I guess the idea is that they assume a refrigerator is a blank slate where you could put something easily like that in a kitchen. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I think its best feature was you could put pictures of your kids up there because magnets don't stick to stainless steel refrigerators. So that's something that's gone away slowly as people have these fancy appliances. You don't have the report card and the pictures of your kids up there. And now you can put it on the digital screen.
You could put all your photos from the last 15 years of your kid's life and just have them cycle through. Right?
I do a little slideshow.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds cool.
Magnets will stick. They just don't do it as well.
Is that
I think.
true?
Yeah. I did this experiment, I think, last weekend with Heather because
you guys were arguing about this?
I think that came up. Yeah, I was like, they still stick to stainless. And I pulled out, like stainless steel knives. And I was like, they still stick.
That's
They're just
there
not
are
as good.
different
kind
grades
of
of stainless steel, and some
Yeah.
of them are magnetic and some aren't.
Yeah. So like the brushed stainless that's on our refrigerator, I mean, we've got 50 magnets on it. It works fine. But yeah, I'm sure, I don't doubt that there's some that it doesn't work very well with.
It's probably the better grades of stainless. I think that probably the consumer grade appliances don't have enough. I think it's nickel that.
Yeah, is not magnetic.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either.
I'm way into the realm of stuff I should not be talking about. Okay. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. Thanks to all of you for listening. Thanks to Matt, Rob, and Jeff for joining me. And please remember to send us your questions to FHB Podcast and check out the show notes at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. I did that from memory. How'd I do? Is that most of it? Happy building.